Good afternoon, possibly still good morning where you are, maybe even good evening as we are indeed worldwide, supposedly. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen. I'm the editor and VP of Streaming Media and the conference chair for Streaming Media Connect. This is our 7th virtual event since spring of 2020. It's not going to be our last, but we are planning to have an in-person event in May. Streaming Media East is back, and it's in Boston for the first time, May 24th and 25th. Registration is open. The program will be going online soon at streamingmedia.com/east. May 24th and 25th, I think I said that. On May 23rd, we will be having the Content Delivery Summit and the Streaming University Workshop. So please join us in Boston. But we're in the middle of another great week of virtual panels and presentations, and winding things up on Friday with a terrific 3-hour workshop called The Best Streaming Gear and How to Use It. If you're into streaming in any way at all, we've got something for you this week. So thanks for joining us. And just for being here, you are entered into a drawing to win an Amazon gift card. I'll be announcing the winner of the gift card at the end of today's panel, and then the winner will receive an email with more information following that. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Bird Dog and Harmonic, and we've got brief video messages from them right now. Housekeeping notes before we jump in. If you do have questions for our panel, please put them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom window rather than in the chat. It just makes it easier for us to keep track of questions if they come in that way. Also, we do have subtitles turned on. So if you want to turn them off, if you're seeing them and want to turn them off, you can go to the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen, click on that, and then select Disable Transcript. This next panel is all about NextGen TV, ATSC 3.0. In fact, we just put Nadine Krefitz's feature on ATSC 3.0 up on streamingmedia.com this morning. I'll pop a link to it in the chat in just a minute. And I would like to thank Myra Moore from Digital Tech Consulting for putting this panel together. We've got a great mix of people here. Myra, why don't you turn on your camera and join? Welcome.
Hello.
Hello to a fellow Central Time Zoner. Yes. There aren't many of us. Myra's down in Dallas, and Myra put this panel together. We've got a terrific sampling of different stakeholders in the ATSC 3.0 ecosystem. And so with that, I will pass it over to Myra, who will then in turn introduce her panelists. Thanks so much.
Yes, and everyone can turn on their cameras, right? Yes. Yep. Okay. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel on NextGen ATSC 3.0 television. We're going to try to make this very relevant to the folks in the streaming world, which there is some exciting things that are happening in terms of the melding or the hybridization of over-the-air TV and internet TV, and that's what we want to focus on today. So for those of you who aren't real familiar, the ATSC 3.0 and NextGen TV are the same thing. We may use those terms interchangeably, but they mean the same thing. ATSC 3.0 is more of the tech name for what we're going to be talking about. NextGen TV is sort of the consumer-facing marketing sort of moniker for that. So this is a new TV service, and it is a standard that combines very high capacity over the air terrestrial TV transmissions with broadband and IP capabilities. And to date, the system has been turned on in the US in about 40 markets. There's about 40 television markets that have several varying numbers of stations that are transmitting in ATSC 3.0. And there's also, it's also completely rolled out in South Korea, but we're going to be focusing on what's happening here in the States. And so I want to introduce the panel here. So Todd Achilles, who is with Evoca TV, he's the CER, I'm sorry, the CEO, I don't know what a CER is, of a new pay TV service that's utilizing ATSC 3.0. And he's got a really interesting proposition, and you guys will be really interested to hear all about this. And then we have a broadcaster here with us who is Susi Elkins, who is the Director of Broadcasting and the General Manager of WKAR, which is a public media station at Michigan State University. And under Susi's direction, WKAR and MSU have put together a NextGen media lab, and there's all kinds of interesting things happening there. And then to round things off, we have a receiver, a TV maker with us. This is Matt Durgin, and he is Director of North American Innovation and Development Team. And he manages a smart TV business, basically, for LG, which is one of the leading providers of NextGen TVs. And so, without any more to say about that, I'm going to start off talking about some of the services that this new format is making available to folks across the country. And I want to start with Todd, because Todd has a really unique proposition with a combination of a pay TV and a free over-the-air TV service, and it's localized. And I just want you to spend a little bit of time, Tom, telling the audience about how ATSC has led you to accomplish this new kind of service, and tell us about the service and its rollout.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Myra. So there were really two things that informed our decision behind creating the Evoca service. First is consumer need, and second is the tech, the ATSC 3.0 tech. So starting with the consumer need, I think, particularly where we are in the Mountain West part of the country, there's a lot of markets that are TV deserts. There's not a lot of options. What there is there, it's expensive and poor quality. And I think pay TV in particular wasn't needed of, sort of a shot of competition and giving consumers more options. So we identified that market, which is about $120 billion in the US, and then made a specific focus around sports. Sports being, everyone says sports is the glue that holds together the pay TV bundle. But what's been happening is local and regional sports have really been kicked to the side as cord cutting has accelerated and the economics have changed. So we made a particular focus on regional sports as being really the anchor in the service. So that's the consumer need. And then on the tech side, I spent most of my career in the wireless industry, and ATSC 3.0 is the world's best air interface. It's just absolutely amazing what you could do with it. It's more spectrally efficient than 5G. You have the advantage of TV stations, which just operate at massive power and have 100-mile reach for full power stations, and it's protected spectrum. So you've got this advantage of having this incredibly spectrally efficient air interface with this gigantic footprint. And then on top of that, with 3.0, it's all IP based. So now for the first time, broadcast talks to the internet, and you can create these hybrid architectures. And that's exactly what we've done. So we created a hybrid pay TV service that's sort of 3.0 is the foundational technology. But we deliver our content. We we stream 100% of our content. Some of it's streamed over the air, some of it's streamed over the internet connection to our set-top box. But having those broadcast efficiencies and being able to operate with multicast economics, it costs us the same amount to deliver a 4K stream to 100 homes as 100,000 homes. And so we take those system efficiencies and use that to deliver a more competitive service to consumers. So, we launched Denver a couple of weeks ago, and with a $25 a month service plus the receiver, and it's really the best. We've got the best lineup of regional sports in Colorado, and it's just been off the charts in terms of the response.
Yeah, and also your sports packages are localized according to your market, right? Okay.
They are.
Well, this is I'm going to talk more about the localization in a minute, but let's go to Susi though, because I wanted to ask Susi. One of the things you hear about ATSC 3.0 or NextGen TV is that it's particularly well suited for public broadcasters. And so my question is, can you tell us why it is so well suited for public broadcasters, and what are you doing or planning to do to provide new services to your audience?
Sure. Well, I think most public broadcasters are very interested in education, civic engagement, public safety, those kinds of things. And so when I first started to learn about particularly the convergence benefits, so there are a lot of benefits to ATSC 3.0 or NextGen TV, but I really wanted to think about that convergence piece of what happens if we now have the power of this IP infrastructure, exactly what Todd was talking about. What would we do to serve our communities? Because in public broadcasters in particular are always looking for, all broadcasters want to tailor their services. They want to connect to their communities. They want to provide key services. But the use cases that we were thinking about were particularly exciting for us around the education piece and civic engagement and public safety. And we just saw a real opportunity to think about how we could create applications. So not necessarily the rollout and the technology piece and all of those kinds of things, but given that core proposition of the convergence, what would we do to hyper serve our local communities? So when you think about education, are there ways to essentially combine the services that we create online, where we send people to go online and look at videos or lesson plans, just to learn about what we're sharing through the broadcast? It really now can be powered together all at once in an immersive experience that makes a lot more sense, that can be tailored, that can be localized and individualized in ways that we hadn't really thought about doing before. So that was really what our interest was in creating the lab at Michigan State, was to think about, assuming this technology rolls out, how would we use it to better serve our communities, and thinking about the ability to not only utilize data and serve it and creating services, but to collect data that informs in real time what our services could be. So, there are more specific things I can talk about related to the lab, but I think that those key bucket areas for public broadcasters, that's really where our interest lies, is in creating more educational services and informing the general public so they can be civically engaged and have the information they need to make strong decisions for their local communities. And then, of course, we're the backbone for public safety services already. What does this look like in this new world? We think we could really target and localize using this technology to create better services there too.
Yeah, and I would imagine, Susi, that although you weren't anticipating it, with looking at some of the applications and the use cases, when the pandemic came along and the kids had to all stay home and study from school, on their TVs or their devices, it must have provided a tremendous educational opportunity for you all to think about how this might work.
There's a lot of work happening in states and in stations across the country right now in terms of, we've been doing a lot of data casting for many, many years to support education. But really there's always been a need. There's always been a big divide in terms of education for kids who have and have not. And that's always been there. But I think COVID really put a spotlight on it and showed us how bad it is and actually how much worse it can get. And for public broadcasters, free over-the-air services, accessibility is key to us, and it really very, very important. And so this really could potentially be a strong opportunity to make sure that we're looking to make sure that that kids and families have equal access to information and educational services. And so it's become really, really, it's always been important to us, but I think the spotlight that COVID has put on it has increased our ability to communicate this commitment that we've always had. And so that's been really helpful.
Yeah, I think too that what Todd said about the efficiency of the system and, having a one-to-many broadcast signal that you can supplement with broadband will be perfect for the, the virtual education piece. So can you just give us a couple of examples of some of the things that you're doing in your NextGen Media Lab? And just take a minute to tell us about what that is and what that work is.
Sure. Back in 2018, we applied for an experimental license because as we started to learn about the potential of NextGen TV and what this convergence could mean and what the efficiency could mean, Michigan State really took an interest in wanting to innovate in that space. And we decided that there was a lot of talk about use cases and what this could look like. And it was really exciting to us. And we felt like somebody needed to actually make it real. So there was still a lot of work happening on the technical side, a lot of engineering, a lot of vendors working really hard to make sure that all of the technical pieces could come together. And we felt like we needed a space where we could envision, what does it look like for a station our size with few resources? How would we manage working within this type of an environment, and what kinds of use cases would we create? So we produced a local show called Curious Crew. It's for upper elementary, lower middle school kids, and it's a very STEM-based science show. And we started thinking about when we spend a lot of resources to create the broadcast program, and then we have all kinds of materials that go along with the broadcast program. That's something that public broadcasters do, is lots of educational materials that match. And so we started imagining if we can converge those things. So there's a digital team working here online, and then within the internet space, and then there's the broadcast team. What do we need to think about to create this program in a NextGen space where we're all working together? So the production process is completely different for this type of an environment if you really want to fulfill the interactivity potential possibilities there are with NextGen. So the lab space is just where we have been working on creating and making real these types of applications that we hope will, be used in the future in communities across the country. So we focused on Curious Crew for educational interactivity. We've worked on campus to think about public safety and what that looks like in terms of utilizing both internet technologies and broadcast technologies for redundancies, to support each other. I think that's really key. A lot of people say, is it going to be 5G, or is it going to be ATSC 3, or is it going to be this? And I think it's going to be all of those things. It's going to be really important for us to realize the potential that we want to have for this immersive and educational experience. It's going to take all of those things. And so we've experimented with, what does it mean to combine all these different technologies in the public safety world? And so it's a space to just try to create and make things real, so that when we talk about these use cases, we can have something to look at and understand what this means. Because once you do that, then all the really smart people, all of your content creators, your producers, all of the technical folks that have never really worked together in these ways start saying, oh, the technology can do that. Well, then I'm going to create this because I think this service would be really great, or this application would be really cool. And so that's what the lab is about, is to just kind of make it as real as possible so that people could spark ideas and start building things like Todd has been doing for a long time now. There's a lot of public broadcasters who have surpassed even what we're doing in terms of their thinking. And I feel like perhaps our lab had a little bit of sparked a little bit of that interest, and hopefully the progression for this to become real, because I think it has a pretty amazing possibilities, and it is real now in 40 markets, like you said. And so the key thing is, what does that mean for consumers and how can we serve them? And that's really what we've been focused on.
Very good. So speaking of being real, since we do have some transmissions going on out there and some streaming going on out there, I want to turn to you, Matt, for a minute and talk about televisions with ATSC 3.0 tuners, which of course LG is selling those now. And my question is, we're at very early stages for this. The Consumer Technology Association estimates about 3 million ATSC 3.0 tuner TVs were shipped in 2021. It's not a huge number, less than 10% of all TVs, but we're at the early stages. Matt, what do you think about how long it will take before we see, you know, some real wide distribution in households of receivers for NextGen?
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I think the market that, well, I've been doing this for LG, and I can tell you every single person that I've ever worked with, you know, wants scale to happen as quickly as possible. I understand that effect. It pays off, you know, a lot of the effort that we're all taking on. But this is one of these technologies that has a rollout period, right? You have stations being stood up, you have towers being stood up, you have markets being addressed, you have TVs adopting the technology. And so that period is going to take some time. There's no doubt about it. It's not gonna be a snap of the fingers and everything's gonna be on overnight. But what's important is that during that time frame, all the companies that are working together in this, both, you know, TV manufacturers, box manufacturers, broadcasters, content companies, all of this has to generate the process that's going to be a satisfying consumer experience. And so that's what I focus on. We have a ton of people that focus on selling TVs, but my role for LG is to really look for the synergies between a streaming environment that has evolved over the last 15 years to be a robust environment that can have synergies with a next gen TV environment. And I think that's where I find the most excitement, because it took us 15 years to change the TV from you know, something that a lot of people that are on this panel remember to what it is today. And now in the next, you know, half a decade or decade, we're going to be working together to continue that evolution to provide even more consumer value.
Yeah, and which I think one of the things that's important to think about is, you know, historically TV manufacturers have not really been involved in the services part of the business, but that's really all changed now. And so, you know, how does your company and other folks that make TVs, what are they doing to evolve this TV viewing experience? Because we were talking about this before we started the panel. You know, it's confusing to get on the TV today and figure out where you are and what you're going to watch. And so how are you helping solve that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Well, first of all, I mean, think about, let's put NextGen TV into the arena as another way to get content to the consumer. So you have applications, you have LG channels, LG's streaming channel lineup. Many of the TV manufacturers have their own streaming fast channels, free advertising based channels that are streaming to consumers. And then you're going to have NextGen TV stations being broadcast. For LG in particular, the interesting thing about how NextGen fits into the current environment is that LG channels, which is LG's streaming fast environment, is also the home of NextGen broadcast channels. So you have essentially broadcast channels with ATSC 3.0 technology working inside the same environment as streaming fast channels. And a lot of those streaming fast channels are provided by broadcasters. So now you have broadcasters that are streaming fast channels, that are broadcasting ATSC 3.0 channels, and they have apps with subscription services or other methods of getting content to consumers. All of those methods for content to get to those consumers have to be seamless. You have to be able to finish one viewing activity and understand if you want to continue consuming content that way, or if you want to move into another method, and search and recommendation and deep linking, cross-linking, and all those activities are going to become a big part of smart TV's future. So I think that that's going to be exciting. But if you're a consumer, think about how great that is. Think about the ability to consume, ATSC 3.0 content in, more areas of the house with a better picture quality, being able to seamlessly switch to previous seasons or to be able to switch to related content under a subscription that's in a streaming environment, or being able to get personalized recommendations to you because you have a one-to-one relationship with those devices. And I think that that's the promise of NextGen TV, that it's coming at the perfect time to become another great consumer activity that's already going to be able to sit inside of a world of content that's evolved here to provide a very robust experience for consumers.
So, and that gets us into a world that's a little bit different for broadcasters, which is things like working with operating systems and developing apps. And so, Todd, I wanted to ask you, so what is being done or has been done at Evoca TV for creating apps and, bringing the services all together under one umbrella?
Yeah, and I think what Susi and Matt are talking about, this hybrid experience is really the core to what we've done. We've created this over the air, over the top experience, but have really worked hard to abstract the underlying delivery. So behind your remote, you have no idea if one of the channels you're watching in the EPG is being streamed, it's coming over the air. It doesn't really matter. It's as long as the content's there and it's easy to get to. And for us, we use the Viewed operating system on our current box, and that gives us an app catalog on top of some other functionality that we've got. We're able to kind of pull this together. We announced this really cool service that we'll be rolling out soon, where it's kind of a smart DVR, but we're basically taking the games that we're streaming in Colorado, the Nuggets and the Avalanche, and we're sort of creating an app that updates in live or in real time with the games. So rather than having to set a DVR or go back or try and catch one of the re-airs, you just go to the app side of the user experience, click on the Nuggets app, and boom, you can watch the game last night and see the phenomenal finish. And this is, I think, that sort of hybrid experience where you begin to pull these pieces together. We think, I think building on Susi's, we think there's a lot of the interactive work that we're doing in around live sports, we think is directly applicable to education. We've got a couple free over the air learning channels, and beginning to integrate quizzes and move people forward and look at career opportunities and things like that we're trying to take sort of what we're doing on the pay TV side and make it available in our communities.
And Susi, I wanted to get your comments on that. I know you talked about it a little bit, but in terms of, is there actual app development going on in the lab, or is there an operating system that you all are working with on the broadband side, and if that's too technical of a question for the general manager, tell me. But I
there's
doubt.
there's app development happening in conjunction with, we've been working with Guyan for a while now and learning about all the different types of apps that need to be created. So the broadcaster app, potentially the dashboard that we would use, the apps that would work, whether, again, like the other panelists are saying, a seamless experience. So, using the broadcaster app to create an experience that someone can engage with on their phone or on the TV, wherever they are. We're creating the application that on the edge side, it doesn't matter to the consumer where they are. So it needs to be able to work in all of those environments seamlessly. And I think, again, that's the promise of what this is that the consumer doesn't really care. And we won't even necessarily, my understanding of how this is working is, which has been really interesting to me, is it doesn't matter. Like, we can choose the best way to deliver, whether it is through using the broadband piece or the broadcast piece. We have all of those tools available to us. And what was kind of mind blowing to me as the general manager, as we were creating these apps, is, oh yeah, that means we have all these tools that normally would be available, like machine learning, like, managing all of these data lakes. This is all in our purview now. And where that kind of language and work wasn't necessarily something that was front and center for me, but I think getting really comfortable with that and understanding the technical side of that enough so that you can think about content and services, I think is really key. But yes, I mean, we're actually creating the applications that would facilitate the interactive piece of, I mean, my big dream for education is, and PBS does this really well in the app world and the gaming world, where if a child is working on a game, it follows their trajectory and their learning and meets them where they are really, really well. And that's very difficult to do in a broadcast environment and, traditionally. And so now, to me, combining the power of the broadcast, that one-to-many, and then all of this work that's been happening in the gaming side and on all the curriculum development, where you can actually follow a person, an adult too, and if each of us could have a learning profile that just kind of is with us no matter what we're interacting with, and the content knows how to meet me where I am and not be too easy, but also not so hard that I get frustrated, but meets me right where I am. I mean, I think that's pretty incredible. And I think it was Todd who talked about the career side of it. We've been talking with partners about, kids are constantly working within schools their whole entire student career, and we're not really collecting any information about what they're most excited about, what they're doing. And you could really be connecting, what are they watching? Are they watching Nova? Are they watching this? What are their tendencies for where they have aptitude? These are just, we do this in a very, very analog way right now. And I see NextGen potential as a way to really create a learning ecosystem for each individual. And I mean, that's like a long-term vision that I have. And so when we're building something for Curious Crew, it's as simple as, like, instead of sending them to do this quiz online, how is it integrated, and does the content change based on their answers? I think we can do that. And that's really mind-blowing to me and really exciting. And that's what we're trying to create within the lab.
Yeah, and technically, the system will allow you to do those things. That doesn't mean that it all happens instantly and easily, but it does. And so it's really a matter of kind of building up an infrastructure of tools and things like that, which I know you guys are doing in your lab work. And Matt, I wanted to ask you, as a consumer electronics TV manufacturer, so you hear these things that Susi is talking about and other people that are talking about regarding all the new things that can be done with the hybrid piece. As a TV manufacturer, how involved do you need to be, or at all, with interfacing with the broadcasters or the broadband suppliers or service providers? How much direct connection do you need to have?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important to be directly connected on a number of levels. I mean, first of all, let's talk about the broadcaster application that Susie was describing. It's got infinite possibilities that broadcasters can use it for, right? They can do personalization. They can drive people to additional content. They can provide local weather. They can do emergency alerts. There's a ton of things that are going through the minds of broadcasters right now in terms of how they can utilize that system. ATSC 3.0 as a technology is good at getting data down to the TV through this new pipe that we have available to us. But at some point, for a consumer to have that interactive experience, it's got to be two-way communication. It's got to be the ability for a consumer to say, okay, yeah, I'm interested in that. I'm going to click on this, or I'm going to request more. Or I'm going to interact with you as a broadcaster. But that is only possible because of browser technology and Wi-Fi connectivity that has happened because of the smart TV adoption that's already going on. So that's why I think it's a very symbiotic, very synergistic environment, because you have basically a group of broadcasters who are relying on a robust smart TV user base in order to bring their over-the-air experiences in the most robust way possible. And so you have to tap into technologies on the TV. You have to talk about, how does this function? How does VOD work here? How does the browser deal with this request that users are going to be making? How is this presented on the screen? And so I think that it's very important for LG as a manufacturer to have a direct relationship with the broadcasters and with technologies that are playing a role in ATSC 3.0 or NextGen TV, because that's the only way we're going to create fast, seamless, valuable experiences that are going to get this snowball into an avalanche, right? And that's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah, it sounds very collaborative.
It has to be, yeah.
Yeah. I also had another receiver question I wanted to ask. And by the way, if the audience has questions, please send them in, because in a few minutes we're going to open it up to questions. But Todd, I wanted to ask you about, because you have a set-top box receiver in your service. So far, we've seen mostly TVs. Of course, LG, Samsung, Sony, Hisense just announced that it's going to have TVs in the market with ATSC 3.0 tuners in them, but not so much other devices. And so can you talk a little bit about your company's external receivers and whatever form factor they come in, and also, what role that might play in the rollout? Because let's face it, not everybody's going to replace their TV frequently.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. We as part of being able to deliver our service, we had to build our own set-top box. People that have been on the hardware side know hardware is hard. It takes a lot of time to do. But yeah, we've been at it for about 3 years from concept, really ramping up production. And the set-top box, for just that reason, Myra, we didn't know where the TV adoption was going to be, and I think really good progress is being made on that. But also this idea of creating this end-to-end experience, and really tuning that hybrid architecture. We really needed to do that on our own box and create this closed loop system, in the same way that a satellite provider has their own set-top box, or a cable provider has their own set-top box. So, and with that, we're able to really push the envelope in terms of, the number of channels that we push over the air, or how we integrate different services, like how we make these routing decisions between content that we put over the air, or we put over the internet connection, the failover between those, just all of these really hard details about creating a good user experience. And we just felt like we had to do it on our own box.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I just think from my own personal experience, I have a TV that I've had for a really long time, and it works great. I'm not ready to get a new one, but I do have an over-the-air antenna, and I do have a an external device that interfaces with that. So, yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I had one more question, and it's really about content creation. And Susie, you may have already kind of covered this, but I would definitely like to hear if you have more to say about it. In terms of being a broadcaster, what kind of content creation are you guys thinking about? I mean, one of the things that impresses me is that with ATSC 3.0, you have so much more capacity on your 6 megahertz of spectrum, and that what are you going to fill it all up with?
Well, I think what's exciting is that, probably each broadcaster at each station thinking about public broadcasters, the answer will be different, which is, I think, what's really great about our public broadcasting system is that we all create based on what our community needs, and it's different across the country. But I think people will be thinking about, do we add more channels? Do we take some of that capacity and really build in that interactivity piece? Do we carve some of that out for spectrum-based businesses and services that we wouldn't before we wouldn't have been able to do? I think there will be some regulatory work that needs to happen for some of those things to happen. But when it comes to like core content creation, I think that's really where our heart is and where we want to create more and new types of content with matched services. And some of the ways we've been thinking about it, I can speak just for us. I got really excited in terms of thinking about what it means with sort of open source databases that are available. And so as I was thinking about what the technology allows us to do, thinking about, well, we do debates. A strong service from a local public broadcaster is to provide governmental debates or people running for elections, and I think it just would really be an incredible service to load. And in the back end, traditionally we would say, we have these candidates speaking, here are their profiles online, here's their voting records, go find all of that kind of stuff. But as a producer, you could really take existing information and make that part of the broadcast and part of the piece. So we created a sort of a test case where if we were at a debate and a candidate was talking about their record, their voting record, or a record on gun rights, or those kinds of things, it really could be immersively bringing that information up in a way that I wouldn't even think about going to check on. So you could do, a lot of real-time fact checking. There are things that we kind of do right now already, but I just think that this will be a much more immersive experience when you think about that. I think there's a lot more educational type content that we can think of. Frontline is always way out in front doing really incredible things with technology. I can't wait to see what they come up with when it comes to NextGen. There's some new content that they're creating right now using augmented reality and databases, and to me, it's like the perfect test case for NextGen, and I hope that's the next iteration of where they go. So I think as public broadcasters, we also want to entertain as much as any broadcaster. It needs to be fun, it needs to be educational, it needs to be informative, and I think we're still learning what the technology could do, but we'll probably have a balance between services that we provide in our local communities, maybe with municipalities, smart city technology, those kinds of things, and potentially more channels, and certainly, hopefully, much more robust and interactive content.
Very good. So one quick question on content for you, Todd. I've noticed by looking at your service is that you're very much in aggregating content, but you're in local markets. Yeah. And so I'm assuming that there's some content there that's being geared toward that community. What kind of reaction are you getting from people who are signing up? I mean, are they surprised, or is that a big draw for them to sign up for your service?
It actually is, because as a broadcaster, we get to do things on a market by market basis. So We've got the educational channels that we talked about. Some of that content is oriented towards what's happening in the community. We carry the Evergreen channel, which is Tom Skerritt's streaming channel that really highlights artists from the Pacific Northwest. And so we carry that on our system in Idaho, but not in Colorado or Arizona. Doing a bunch of really cool stuff with Colorado State University. They've got both some phenomenal learning content, as well as we've got a pop-up channel for Colorado State sports. So, men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball, bunch of sports that sort of never get picked up at the national level or carried linearly. We're carrying them on our system. So, if you dug through the web, you could find these games streaming, but we pull them forward, we make them accessible and really curate it. And then, the one I really like is the only Basque language channel in the United States is available on our system in Idaho because that's the largest Basque speaking population outside of Spain.
Yeah. Yeah. And where do you get that? So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Thank you. Well, we're getting to the point where we should really go to the questions. And I've got several here, a mix of kind of overview and then a little bit more technical. Actually, Todd, did I see that you had something to say about 5G, or did I get that?
Yeah, just there was a question comparing 3.0 and 5G. And, having spent most of my time in the wireless industry, I've got a bit of a perspective on that. So take it for what it's worth. But I do think that, if you think 5G is going to be a substitute for 3.0 in terms of delivering video to the home, it's nowhere close. 3.0 is so much more spectrally efficient. You've got all the multicast efficiencies on top of it. And then, out of the home, 5G is a phenomenal way to deliver bits. But that mobility layer in wireless air interfaces takes 25, 30% of the total system capacity, just keeping track of where the mobile is and, what's your serving cell site. And so with 3.0, obviously, you don't have that mobility layer. You have sort of the whole bandwidth focused on, delivering bits to the home, and just it's orders of magnitude more efficient. Nothing will come close to 3.0.
Yeah. So here's a question for Matt. Does LG's Web OS already allow to build custom smart TV apps with the ability to access an ATSC 3.0 video stream from a tuner or by the app itself? I hope that question came through clearly.
Yeah, I understand the question. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so the capability is there, right? So we do have the capability to do that. I think I'll kind of imply that question is, did we put some kind of open SDK on a website for everyone to do it? And the answer to that is no, we haven't opened that up to everyone, but that is a capability that we've actually done some tests with on ATSC, the current ATSC 1.0, the non 3.0. And I think that's something that could be an interesting use case for the future that LG will consider, because we've already been testing that capability with existing applications. So I think that could be an interesting application of getting a 3.0 signal to be able to be integrated into somebody else's service, as long as the licensing and regulatory would be able to accommodate something like that, then I think we'd be open to it. But it's definitely not an easy yes. It's definitely going to involve lawyers and engineers, and that takes time and usually contracts.
Yeah, and money.
And to pay the lawyers and the engineers. Yeah.
So here's a good question. This is from Michael. And as he says, this is for everybody on the panel. Many consumers seem to think that ATSC 3.0 or NextGen TV is mostly for 4K and high-end audio, and that clearly isn't the case. So how does set manufacturers and station managers combat this perception? And this is not an easy task, but I will open it to whomever would like to take that on first. We're not getting any big takers here.
So yeah, so Myra, so just to be clear, we're talking about using ATSC 3.0 for higher quality video or alternative audio or higher end audio, right? And that's one of the most exciting things about this, right? That you know that now broadcasters have these options. I mean, they have a limited amount of spectrum. They have responsibilities in terms of what they do with their spectrum, but now one broadcaster might focus on high-end audio, another broadcaster might focus on, you know, multiple options of video, or maybe one super high quality video. And so that's what I think that's probably one of the neatest things about ATSC 3.0 for broadcasters, is that every broadcaster is going to be able to look at that technology and say, this is how I'm going to use this technology to do what my company can bring to consumers, to get differentiation, not to be the same as everybody else. Even though we're all using this technology, the fact that one broadcaster is going to focus on high quality audio, another broadcaster is going to focus on providing audio in 3 different languages. You know, those are choices that the broadcasters now have, that's going to be able to enable them to fit what they do as a content company with what they want to go attract for our consumer base.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues is that this system is so flexible, and there are so many things that can be done with it, that it poses somewhat of a marketing problem in terms of focusing, you know, how to focus the message.
Definitely consumer communication is one of our next challenges, to be able to build user experiences that both explain to consumers what their options are, along with providing that value. It's definitely, and it's a challenge that smart TVs have had to manage over the last decade and a half as well. Same kind of problems to fix.
And I think, just building briefly on Myra, the comment about local content. So, you know, in Idaho, those are TV deserts. So there are very few alternatives for consumers there. And so we're really coming in with a service that competes, you know, strong lineup of channels, lower cost, all of that, you know, and we made the decision based on our sort of our spectrum footprint to be able to allocate the capacity to be able to do a full 4K UHD channel over the air. We've been doing that for about 2 years. And it looks just phenomenal when you're flipping through the channels and you land on the 4K channel. You know, in a market like Phoenix, it's 33% of the homes in that gigantic market watch TV over the air. So there's a different value proposition that, you know, broadcasters would need to do in a market like that, versus in Colorado. You know, the anchor content for us is Altitude TV, which has been unavailable on Comcast and Dish in that market. So 85% of homes in Colorado can't watch, you know, the Nuggets and the Avs and the local teams. So that's really the anchor content for us that's driving our business there.
We have one more question, or time for one more question. And Susie, it's for you, and I'm just going to read it to you, and you're going to let us know whether it's something that you can answer. But there is a question that does NextGen TV provide unique opportunities to smooth the customer access via PBS Passport?
I think yes, as all of these things evolve, the whole idea is that there will be ease of use across all of our experiences. And I think, so, you know, that's my best answer, is I do think it will improve all of our services over time. But it's, you know, Passport is utilized a little bit differently. You know, people come to it sort of wanting it to feel like a Netflix, wanting it to feel like some of these other services, and it really should. I mean, I think that's the competition piece that we feel, even as public broadcasters, where, you know, we have put a different business model than other broadcasters do, and yet we still are working to serve these really savvy consumers that have these expectations for how the tools are going to work and how to facilitate these experiences. So in a lot of ways, I see NextGen as a way for us. It seems overwhelming, I think, to some of my colleagues and peers and to myself as well at times, but in a lot of ways, it's going to simplify our ability to create experiences and services because we can create it in one space and know that it's going to work on a phone, on a tablet, on a big screen, as opposed to having multiple teams working for all these different platforms in these silos. So I think overall, yes, it's going to smooth out the ability, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question exactly how it's asked, but I think that we're all looking forward to being able to utilize these tools in ways that the overall goal always is to provide better service and better experiences for people. And it's necessary for us just as much as it is for any other broadcaster, because there's so much out there, and we want to make sure we're relevant and viable for our audiences, for the next 50 years. So.
There's one more question here that we've got time for, and I think it's a good way to wrap up the panel as well, which is, how many more years do we have for testing ATSC 3.0 before it's a reality everywhere? And I think timing, see, there's Todd says, no, nothing, no more, no more years. And in his case, that's true. And the technology is really fully baked. We've got more than 40 markets on the air. And really what's happening now is the melding together of the over-the-air transmissions and the broadband piece of the puzzle. Matthew, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think basically the way that I would answer this question is ATSC 3.0 NextGen TV. This does not have to be tested, right? We've tested it, we've launched it, it's live. It's not everywhere, like you said. It's about 42 markets currently, and it's going to be about a little less than 100 markets by the end of the year. Over 80% of the population will be able to consume NextGen TV by the end of this year. So we're in that moment where the expansion of ATSC 3.0 is it's happening, and consumers are able to have ATSC 3.0 today. So zero testing for ATSC 3.0. But what we do have to continue to test is kind of these new technologies, right? Broadcaster applications, audio switching, and on all the use cases that we're coming up with broadcasters on how to use the technology. And this will be seamless to users, right? They'll have, one day today they'll be able to go into an ATSC 3.0 market and consume ATSC 3.0 content. But then maybe in another 6 months, now they'll start seeing options for broadcaster applications, or maybe they'll start seeing some other technologies start to change the experience. Consumers will not realize that before they saw it, it was tested, and it was, and we did some QA testing in order to make sure that the consumers were going to have a good experience with it. It'll just be seamless, added functionality to what they already have.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to add to that? I think that we'll call that a wrap then, and we'll go back to Eric.
That was terrific. Thank you so much, Myra and Matthew and Todd and Susie. That was a terrific discussion. And we check in a couple times a year at our conferences and in our magazine to see what the status of ATSC 3.0 NextGen TV is. And it's been fascinating to watch it come along. Thanks to the audience for so many great questions. The winner of the Amazon gift card is Sarah Machado. Sarah, keep your eye on your email, and we will send you a note letting you know how to redeem that. Join us again in a little over a half an hour for a discussion on how to scale live events to 100,000 viewers or more. Thanks so much, and so long.